be honest, I was never a massive fan of 2D fighters. They're just too fast-paced and full of mad, complicated combinations for me. I found it a bit more like playing pinball or something than actually fighting, and I used to find them kind of stressful and mildly irritating to play, to be honest. Street Fighter 2 back in the day had me tearing my hair out. I recognise that some of them are fantastic games. Of course, they're just not my personal favourites. It's my problem, I'll deal with it. But in the early to mid-90s, 3D fighting games arrived, and I took to them right away, finding them a bit more cerebral, evenly paced, strategic, and satisfyingly weighty. That's the good ones, of course, for there were many ones. The Sega Saturn had both good and 3D fighting games, and many of them were unique to the console. As the Saturn is push comes to shove my favourite console of all time, I have decided to rank these 3D fighting games. This means, of course, that we'll get an absolute load of crap at the bottom of the list, and then we'll get a huge AM2 fest to close out the show, but hey, it should be a fun ride regardless. Let's get sweaty.
Let's get sweaty.
Criticom. Oh dear.
Oh dear.
This might just be the worst game I've played on Sega Saturn. I almost feel bad criticising this because, you know, it seems like there's been quite a bit of thought put into the setting and the characters and stuff. There's nice CGI intros and whatnot. It's a nice package. Unfortunately, you can't do anything. It's incredibly stiff. Feels like you're glued to the floor. It's, I don't know how to sum this one up, really. It's almost unplayable, I'm afraid to say. But it is an interesting curio nonetheless. I have to give this one like a 2 out of 10.
Ready? Go!
Fist is a fighting video game published by Imagineer, released in 1996 for the Sega Saturn. It features 6 of the most popular voice actresses in Japan to bolster the blocky early Virtua Fighter polygon graphics. This is the follow-up to the saucy Pretty Fighter X. This one, again, is very sluggish indeed to play. I like elements of the presentation. This character artwork is pretty rad. It's a pretty weak game though, in my opinion. Again, it's like wading through treacle. You can barely move, which weirdly seems to be quite a common theme for some of these non-Sega titles on this list. Kinda cool graphics though. I give this one a 4.
Freeze, come on!
Ready? Fight!
4, 4, 4, 4, 4.
Final Fight Revenge is a 1999 arcade game and the fifth release in the Final Fight series. Its tagline is Violent Storm Rising. A Sega Saturn port was released only in Japan on March 30th, 2000, where it was the second to last game officially released for the platform. The game was developed by the same American team that later produced Maximo, Ghosts to Glory, and Final Fight Streetwires. This is a famously shit game, but to be honest, it wasn't quite as bad as I was expecting. I think the main problem with this game is the AI. They're extremely defensive to the point where I found that the best thing to do was just hurl quarter moon punches at them constantly as their health dropped bit by bit, as they would just stand there blocking the attacks. And occasionally you'll be able to get a throw in, etc. It's a shame really, because the presentation is nice. This is quite impressive looking for a game of its vintage, and it has some flashy special moves and some fun ideas and artwork and stuff. Yeah, it just needed a bit more time in the oven, I think. I will give this one a 5.
Ready? Fight!
4, 4, 4, 4, Geronimo! 4,
KO! Hager wins!
Bout 1, fight!
Battle Arena Toshinden Remix, named Toshinden S in Japan, is an enhanced port of Battle Arena Toshinden released for the Sega Saturn. A few new features were added, including an exclusive new character and a story mode which enables the player to learn a few details about the characters' story backgrounds and the reasons why they entered into the tournament.
A better fighter. I'm lucky I won.
I think you're ready for anything now.
You think so? An expert like you?
You just need a few more fights. Soon you'll be worthy to wield the White Tiger.
This one gets bonus points from me as it features the voice of Chen Shuo from Snatcher.
It seems you still have some fight left in you.
Sometimes I talk too much.
Fight!
Show them!
Thundering!
Recruit them!
Thundering! Thundering!
It's pretty tidy looking for a Saturn game actually, but it's stodgy and stiff. Toshinden was never a great game, even though the graphics were impressive for a very early PS1 title. It's a similar story here. You know, taken as a whole package, it's quite enjoyable. These characters waffle on for far too long between bouts, And along with the quiet, kind of, inconsequential music, it gives the whole thing a kind of weirdly subdued atmosphere. There's no urgency to it. The characters kind of seem like they're friends as they're chatting to each other. The character designs are fun though, and the overall anime style, there's some cool backdrops, and this fucking Scottish accent is absolutely amazing though. Just listen to this.
The man who killed my father won last year's tournament. I will find him and have my revenge.
I'll pluck out your eyes, you wee shite.
Show them! Deadly rain! Deadly rain! Deadly rain! Sonic Flash! Deadly rain! Yeah!
The accent be shite. It's par for the course.
Battle Arena Toshinden Ura Ultimate Revenge Attack is an enhanced port / exclusive adaptation of Battle Arena Toshinden 2 released in 1996 for the Sega Saturn. It's a somewhat kind of sequel to Battle Arena Toshinden Remix while also serving as a Gaiden side story game to the main series. It is the second and final game of the series to appear on Saturn. Although it's based on the original version of Battle Arena Toshinden 2, Battle Arena Toshinden Ura has altered gameplay, making it feel notably different. It also has all new arenas, a new story, a different CG intro, and 4 exclusive new characters: Ripper, Ron, Replicant, and Wolf, that replace 4 of the original version's characters: Gaia, Chaos, Uranus, and Master. Although within the game Ura is an abbreviation, the word Ura also has combat connotations in Japanese. There you go, you learn something new every day, don't you? This one has high-res backdrops, it's faster, it's a lot better overall than the original game in my opinion. It's not great, but I did enjoy this one back in the day. I found a cheap copy of it in Curry's in the dying days of the Sega Saturn for about £15. Took it home and yeah, I thought it was kind of cool. Not exactly good, but cool, you know? You can move around so much more easily than the original game. It's faster, it has more urgency, the music's better, the backdrops are pretty appealing, it looks sharp as attack in the Saturn's high-res mode. It's still a little bit hopeless compared to some of the best games on this list, but you know, it has a certain something. It definitely does. I'm going to give this one a... Ooh, this is tricky. I'm going to give this one a 7. DX Herd, I think that's just D Herd, is a 3D weapons-based fighting game developed by Next Tech and published by Takara, the same company that created the Battle Arena Toshinden series, which the game is inspired by, apparently. Players choose their fighter and fight through the cast in the common fighting game fashion. Players are able to strafe using the Saturn shoulder buttons as well as performing attacks with the strafe commands such as grabs and special moves. Depending on the opponent, the arena will either consist of a ring or a cage. Players and opponents as well have the ability to avoid falling out of the ring by pressing the jump button just as they are about to fall. Players and enemies alike can also use the walls of a caged arena to deal extra damage on an opponent by knocking them against the cage's walls. Just look at this intro, it's all boobs and earrings and giant cocks. Sorry, swords. Yeah, it's kind of sluggish. It's like Toshinden. It has super gay music, like a Pet Shop Boys song kinda. I really liked some of the backdrops in this game and the use of colour. This game improved as I continued to play it. After half an hour or so, I was starting to quite enjoy it. The art style is cool and unique. Unfortunately, though, it can't make the upper echelons of this list. I give it 7 out of 10. Toryu Densetsu Elandor. This is an interesting one. Sega's Virtua Fighter was a killer app for the Saturn, and so many developers made their own attempts at 3D fighters. However, outside of Sega's spin-offs like Last Bronx and Fighting Vipers, or competing titles from Namco like Soul Edge and Tekken, very few of these were really any good. Dragon Legend Elandor was seemingly the only game developed by a company called Cymate, and while it's not terribly good, it's certainly very interesting. Rather than simply putting two guys/gals and having them duke it out in your standard fighting game fashion, all the characters in this game are riding on dragons. The game has a typical fantasy anime theme, with characters including the dark elf Levi Curio, the ninja lady Keiaki, and blonde knight Kane. This is an ambitious title with impressive graphics for the time, with very detailed character models. It kinda works as a fighting game, although it does get rather chaotic and clumsy. It's not one that I would have bought personally back in the day, but it most definitely has its charms, and I praise its originality. I give this one a 7 too. Zen-Nippon Pro Wrestling featuring Virtua. It's a wrestling game. It started out on Sega's STB arcade hardware. It combines a good-looking wrestling game with real Japanese pro athletes, plus Jeffrey and Wolf from the Virtua Fighter series. In gameplay terms, this is a mixture of button-mashing wrestling games with the skill and finesse of Virtua Fighter. These are not my words. This one has cool graphics for the time, although this follows the mold of Megamix and Vipers, where although it outputs in the Saturn's super high-res mode, the character models appear to be rendered at a lower resolution, and this gives it kind of a scrappy appearance in my opinion. The animations, however, are great, and it plays nicely, although I've no real idea of what I'm doing.
さあ今ゴングが打ち鳴らされた。おっと両者気合十分といったところだ。技のキレがいいぞ。
But I certainly did have some fun. It's a well-produced, pretty high-quality game, but it's just not my cup of joe, unfortunately. Still, there is quality here. I give it a 7.
秋山大きく右を切った。後ろに投げていった。カバーした。決まった。見事カウント3を奪いました。
Savaki is a 3D fighting game developed by Sinus and published by Micro Cabin for the Sega Saturn exclusively in Japan on April 16th, 1998, at the end of the Saturn's life here. Savaki puts players in control of a generic, unnamed practitioner of one of 7 different martial arts styles as they fight others in a mixed martial arts setting. The game is known for its dedicated attack feint buttons and a special Savaki button. This game includes 7 fighting styles with 2 generic unnamed practitioners for each style. After fighting fighters from all 7 styles, players then fight a stronger freestyle practitioner as the final boss. And what that amounts to is this giant fucking bald golem comes in and smashes you to bits like a dry leaf. This one's okay, I know it has a bit of a cult reputation, it's certainly quite impressive looking. It's still kind of stiff feeling again, but its mechanics are solid, the production values are pretty nice, could have done with some more variety in the settings, but hey, it is a sort of MMA themed thing, so I suppose you can't hope for too much. Yeah, it's a quality game, not top tier. I give this one a low 8 out of 10.
Round 1, fight!
Anarchy in the Nippon is a 3D fighting game in the vein of Virtua Fighter. Please note that this game was developed by ex-AM2 staff. Thus, similarly to the Virtua Fighter series, there are no fireballs or other special attacks of that sort. But unlike Virtua Fighter, there is no jump button, although you can jump over opponents for additional damage when they're on the ground. Also, you can dodge side to side using the Elandor buttons, which was pretty damn cool for the time. I chose to play as Ziggy Stardust here, and although I started out trying to keep my distance and defend and all that kind of stuff, I found that the best thing to do was just plow straight into people and smash them in the face as hard as I could, occasionally looking for a throw and that kind of thing. Cool graphics and amusing characters. It's in the Saturn's high-res mode, so it looks pretty awesome for its time. It's fast-paced, but still a little bit stiff compared to AM2's top-tier stuff in my opinion. It's very good.
Round 2, fight! Knockout!
I give it an 8 out of 10.
Round 1. Fight! Knockout! Round 2. Fight! Knockout!
Virtua Fighter, the original Saturn release, is a fighting game originally created for the Sega Model 1 arcade platform by AM2. If you're familiar with my channel, I have done loads of videos on this game already, so I won't go into it in too much detail. Suffice to say that it is a fantastic, legendary game. I am talking specifically about this Saturn version here. I love the remixed music in this game, but it is very glitchy. Despite this being an excellent core game, of course, I'm putting it a little bit lower down the list due to the problems with this specific Saturn port, and because there's a better version of this very same game coming up shortly. It has numerous, quite severe graphical glitches throughout, a reduced polygon count from the arcade version, and this deducts overall from the presentation. It's a brilliant game, of course, and a massive, massive success for the Saturn in Japan, where it's sold at an almost 1-to-1 ratio with the console itself, incredibly. Not so much in the West, unfortunately, where reviewers at the time were more impressed by Toshinden and Tekken 1 on the PlayStation for some reason. And as the Sega Model 2 fighters came into play on the Saturn along with a better version of this very game, I can't put it any higher on this list. It is still a great game though, of course. 8 out of 10.
3, ready, go! KO!
Fighting Vipers is a 3D fighting video game developed by AM2. It uses the same engine as AM2's Virtua Fighter 2 apparently, but features enclosed arenas and an armor mechanic, and was targeted more towards Western audiences using a US setting and a more freeform style of martial arts. The game was released originally on the Sega Model 2 hardware. Though Fighting Vipers was not very popular in North American arcades, the Saturn version was one of the most high-profile games in the system's '96 holiday lineup and was met with positive reviews. Indeed, I got a copy for Christmas '96, and I really did like it, although it was not one of my absolute favourites, and it still isn't. The style is very fun, certainly, but it's neither as cool, edgy and brutal as something like Last Bronx, nor is it as elegant, polished and downright beautiful as Virtua Fighter 2. The gameplay is interesting. Smashing your opponent's armour off is a fun mechanic, of course. It's very tactile, it's visceral, it's really satisfying, as is smashing your opponents clear out of the ring, of course. It's fast, it's funny, it's a little bit ugly in my opinion, but we love it all the same. It's Fighting Vipers, 8 out of 10.
Win!
Get set. Ready? Go! Knockout. Get set. Ready? Go!
Zero Divide, The Final Conflict. I've heard good things about this game over the years, but I've never managed to get around to actually playing it for one reason or another. It looks fantastic for a game of this vintage, one of the absolute best looking games on Saturn, I would say. The high-res mode is put to very good use here. Super colourful, poppy and imaginative art style. It plays very well too, although not quite on the level of the very top tier in-house Sega stuff, in my opinion. My only issue with this game is the non-humanoid robots in the game. They look awesome and everything, but it's kind of hard to tell where the hitboxes are going to be on these things, which makes it a little bit hit and miss. A humanoid character versus a non-humanoid one is really cool in theory, but it isn't entirely successful in reality. Still a very high quality fighter for the Sega Saturn and a very solid alternative to your typical big boy Saturn 3D fighters. 9 on 10.
Ready? Go! Ring out!
Dead or Alive. This Sega Model 2 arcade game was ported to the Saturn in 1997. It was never released in North America or Europe. The Saturn version added an FMV intro, time attack versus mode, survival mode, training mode, and kumite mode. New costumes for each character, the ability to play as Raidu or Raidu, and Kasumi's system voice. This had similar cutbacks to the Saturn version of Virtua Fighter 2, where the 3D backdrops are replaced by 2D ones, and the characters also had lower polygon models. Despite all this, it looked fantastic for a home console game in 1997. It's polished to within an inch of its life. It's fast, it's furious, it's colourful, it's intense. It still feels a little bit like you're glued to the floor, in my opinion, compared to Virtua Fighter 2 or Last Bronx, but it is a truly excellent game. The great big wobbling tits are absolutely ridiculous though. Nevertheless, I give it a 9 out of 10.
Go! Excellent! Fight 2. Ready, go!
Virtua Fighter Remix, developed in 1995 by Sega AM1, was an update of the original Virtua Fighter. It had higher polygon count models compared to the original Saturn port, texture mapping, and some gameplay changes. It was given away free to all registered Saturn owners in the US via mail and was available for sale in Japan and Europe. This game in many ways makes up for the earlier, slightly rough release of Virtua Fighter by offering a version truly tailor-made for the Saturn hardware. I love the artwork in the character select screen here, it's really cool. It plays just as well as the original, of course, but now the graphics matched and indeed exceeded the graphics of its PS1 rivals Toshinden and Tekken 1. Unfortunately, it came a little too late in the day perhaps, and PS1 had already bolted the fence by the time this game came out, in the UK at least. But hey, we're not going to talk about that right now. We're going to talk about the great texture-mapped graphics, the extremely solid 3D, the smooth frame rate, and the fantastic music, of course. It's a great game. 9 out of 10.
Fight 2. Ready, go!
Ready, go!
Fighter's Megamix. Many might object to me putting this so far down the list, but although it's a very, very fun game, of course, I've never considered it the best fighter on Saturn. In my opinion, it's somewhat unbalanced compared to the other top-tier fighters, both aesthetically and in gameplay terms. I'm not particularly keen on how it looks either. It's in that Fighting Vipers style of low-res character models presented in the Saturn's high-res interlaced mode, and it looks scrappy compared to Virtua Fighter 2 or Last Bronx, in my opinion. This is kind of a celebration, if you will, of this generation of Sega 3D fighters, and it's a damn good time, as you could imagine. This was released in the days when we were all really looking forward to a port of Virtua Fighter 3 for the Saturn. It never happened, but we got this instead. It's a celebration, it's a damn good time, but unfortunately it doesn't make it to the top of the list for me. 9 on 10. Virtua Fighter Kids is a chibi version of Virtua Fighter 2 released in the arcade and on the Saturn in '96. Reportedly, the game was developed to practice on the facial and eye animations of the characters for the impending Virtua Fighter 3, and the characters all have big heads, as you can see. The gameplay itself is slightly tweaked from Virtua Fighter 2. The Saturn version includes some new FMVs and adds programmable button sequences to allow players to test and use pre-made combos. Don't let the kiddie appearance deceive. This is an absolutely blistering 3D fighting game. In fact, it even has certain advantages over Virtua Fighter 2, along with some added weaknesses, of course. I love this little lean back with the head that the characters are able to pull off, almost in the style of a boxing game. I would love to do that in a modern 3D fighter. I think it's really cool. Conversely, the reach of the characters is a bit of a bummer. It's kind of awkward, and the giant heads obviously affect the gameplay somewhat. Whether this is worse, inverted commas, than games with adult proportioned characters is a matter of preference, really. The remix tunes are great, the graphics are sharp as a fucking tack, as is the frame rate. Did this game need to exist? Absolutely not. But is it one of the best fighters on Sega Saturn? Absolutely. 9 on 10.
No way you can stop me!
Fight 2. Ready, go!
No way you can stop me!
So, there are 2 games remaining, so which is going to be top? This pushed me to the limits of my sanity, deciding which one was going to come first. But ultimately, at number 2, it is...
Joy to the world.
Round 1, fight!
Last Bronx. It might sound kind of nuts to some of you, but this really could have been number 1. It is a truly awesome game. It was developed by Sega AM3 for the Sega Model 2 arcade hardware. It was released in Japanese game centers in '96. Home versions of Last Bronx were produced for the contemporary Sega Saturn and Windows systems. In Japan, Last Bronx was kind of a big deal. It was novelized and serialized into comics and radio dramas. A VHS video documenting the motion capture process used for the game and introducing their characters was released in '96. A year later, Takashi Shimizu directed a live-action movie version. The Saturn version was developed by the same team which created the arcade original. Since they believed that the fast weapons movement was the key element of the game's appeal, they prioritized retaining all the animation data and the 60 frames per second frame rate of the arcade version. None of the development team had ever worked on a Saturn game before, apparently, which amazes me. According to Abe, who was also director of the port, the most difficult part was making the collision detection accurate due to the greater amount of calculations attached to weapons, as opposed to hand-to-hand combat. Last Bronx was already a hit and a popular franchise in Japan before the home version's release, but it flopped in US arcades, appearing in only a handful of venues in the country. For shame, it's a somewhat low-profile release in the West, and this sucks because the game is truly excellent. Although the critical response to this game was broadly very positive, opinions did vary somewhat. Personally, I think it's fantastic. Next Generation magazine, for instance, commented that weapons-based combat with Virtua Fighter responses transform matches from stately martial arts trials to short, nasty and brutish struggles for survival. And truthfully, it's kind of refreshing to be nasty and brutish. The Saturn port is nicely fleshed out and offers a number of features that Virtua Fighter 2 does not, like a story mode for example. The motion capture is absolutely stunning to this day. And look at some of the graphics, look at the ceiling on these couple of levels here. Are these the most impressive 3D graphics on Sega Saturn? Well, I certainly think you could make a strong argument for that. I also prefer the AI of this game over Virtua Fighter 2. It feels more organic, it feels like you're fighting against an actual human, and you can't trap them in cheap patterns like you can on that game. It's an incredible and underappreciated Sega gem, one of the finest fighting games of its generation, and I actually think you could make a case for it being the best fighting game on Saturn. However, I just cannot give that accolade to this little gem. It's fast, it's furious, it's brutal, it's awesome, it gets 10 out of 10.
貴様の可愛がっていた優作ちゃんはおねんねの時間だとよ。あんなのがソウルクルーを継ぐなんてな、情よ。こんなんなら俺様が出張るまでのことはなかったね。
もういいのか？
上等だよ。
Round 1 Fight!
おら！
Round 2 Fight!
雑魚は引っ込んでろ。言っとくが先代のことは知らねえぞ。あのバカな優作ちゃんは聞いちゃいなかったがな。ああ、貴様手抜いたな。それで優作のケツ拭いたつもりが。
だとすりゃどうする。
くたばれや！ソウルクルーの残党だわ！
Number 1.
One, ready, go! KO! Fight! 2, ready, go!
Virtua Fighter 2. This is a legendary arcade game and I have done several videos on it, so I'm not going to go into the merits of the original arcade game. Suffice to say that it's a masterpiece. It was subsequently ported to the Sega Saturn in 1995. The Saturn version added an option for remixed music and a learning feature where the AI could adapt to players' abilities. Due to hardware restrictions, the frame rate was changed to 60 from the arcade's 57.5 and the 3D backgrounds were changed to 2D bitmaps. Nevertheless, this game looked absolutely stunning at the time with its blisteringly sharp high-resolution output and mind-melting 60 frames per second update. People forget that 60 frames per second in a 3D game in those days was very, very rare indeed. This is perhaps Sega Saturn's finest hour. It's a near-perfect translation of the arcade blockbuster, featuring 2,000 moves, endlessly deep strategy, and the smartest fighting game system ever devised. It was a true powerhouse of the era, and a game that really encapsulated the brilliance and swagger that Sega had back in those days. Unfortunately, from a sales point of view, it perhaps appeared a little too late in the Saturn's life to turn the tide against Sony's PlayStation, but hey, this is a masterpiece, and it sold like hotcakes, so let's not get too upset about all that. If this game has a flaw, it's the AI for me. The enemies in this game in the latter stages particularly are Neo-like, responding to every move you make like a puma after a gram of cocaine, but conversely they can also be trapped in rather cheap patterns by the player. In two-player mode, however, this game is an absolute masterpiece. It's perfect, the greatest fighting game of the 32-bit generation and one of the finest fighting games of all time without a shadow of a doubt. Needless to say, it's absolutely beautiful too, of course. 10 on 10.
Fight! 2, ready, go!
So there you have it, a few turds and a bundle of 90s gems for your enjoyment. I'm sure most of you will probably disagree with the ranking here, and I wouldn't have it any other way, so please tell me, what are your favourite Saturn 3D fighters? What game comes top of the list for you? Please let me know in the comments below, and please remember... For free!